Hello, welcome to this week's episode of The Effects Loop. I am your host, Jay Byrne. This week is going to be sort of a part 3 of a saga that's been going on for a while now. So if you've seen the other videos, which I actually will link at the tail end of this video if you haven't seen them, okay. I purchased I've gone through so many, it's hard to keep track of. I've ended up with a epiphone Inspired by Gibson / J45. It came with the case. I was excited to get that guitar because it's a really good guitar. If you can get one that's good, all right? What ended up happening was I went through 3 of those guitars. 3 of them, okay? All from the Guitar Center warehouse. And every single one of those guitars had serious problems. We're not talking like minor problems. We're talking like major problems that are gonna cost you some serious money to get fixed down the line, if they're even fixable. So, the last video, I basically said that it was over and I got a good one. Well, it wasn't over and I didn't get a good one. I sat with it for a while, and the more I looked at it, and the more I started noticing that the nut was really crooked on it, like really crooked. And there was issues with the tuning. So I had to adjust the nut because the nut was lowered so much that I actually had to change it. So I ended up changing out the nut with a different one. And when I changed the nut, I realized how crooked the nut channel actually was. It was so crooked that they had filed the nut down slanted to match the guitar. And I was like, for real? And after a lot of work, I eventually got it pretty correct. But I was still having issues with the tension on the strings, and things just weren't right. I was having problems. So what ended up happening was I couldn't deal with it anymore, and I said screw it. And I went and I brought it back yet again. I returned that guitar. And then I got an Alvarez, actually. And it was brand new out of the box. This wasn't Guitar Center's fault. The problem with this guitar. I brought it home. I'm starting to think, there's something wrong with me. Am I being way too picky? But I'm not, because the problems that I was having with these guitars were issues that would cost a lot of money to be fixed down the line. So I brought the Alvarez home. All the tuners were good, everything was good, the neck was good, the nut was straight, everything was good. I go to tighten the truss rod to adjust the neck on this thing. That truss rod is so tight you can't even move it. I had to slack all the strings in order to get the truss rod to move, and when I had to move it, I literally had to put all my force into it to get it to move. Then I finally kind of broke it free, I guess you could say, where the truss rod was moving, but the problem was the neck was so warped that you had to crank that truss rod really hard to get that neck straight. So that neck was a mess. I mean, if you never wanted to touch the truss rod, if you never touched the truss rod, which I don't know how you would, because the neck would shift eventually, you wouldn't have had any issues. You would have just been like, okay, this guitar is fine. But I went to set it up, and the truss rod was a mess. It was just one of these things where I'm like, okay, this is a serious problem. And I did research on it to see if it was something I should be worried about. And basically, as it turns out, it's something that shouldn't be that bad. So I was like, you know what, the heck with this. I went back to Guitar Center, I returned it. And I think at this point they were getting kind of like, okay, dude, what's your problem? But I felt like saying to the workers there, sell me something that's not broken, and I'll stop returning these things. I literally went through like 5 broken guitars. Literally. And I'm not kidding. We're talking about legitimate issues. Okay? So what did I end up getting in exchange for the Alvarez that had the freaking truss rod problem that I had returned for the 3 / Inspired by Gibsons that were all basically falling apart and were so messed up that they were unfixable? All right? Well, maybe not unfixable, but it could cost you a good couple $100. So what did I get? Here it is, folks. Remember the video? I don't know if you watched all my videos, but I made a video about you know, action and stuff on an acoustic guitar, and I was playing this guitar. Well, this guitar was technically perfect. There was nothing wrong with it. I had returned this guitar to one of my local guitar centers, and it was still there. It was still in stock. And I knew that the guitar was essentially perfect because I took the guitar out of the box. I had gotten this from a different guitar center, and I unboxed it, and I knew that it was essentially perfect. There was nothing wrong with the tuners. There was nothing wrong with the bridges, glued on fine. This one I had been a little concerned about a belly bulge, but actually, as I've done the humidification and whatnot, it's gone down. As long as you take care of it, it's fine. And actually, as it turns out, the belly bulge that I was concerned about wasn't an issue anyway. But so I went back, I got this stuff, and I've had this for like a week or two now. And actually, if you watched one of my previous videos where I did a tribute for my dad, like a memorial party that my mom threw for my dad, I was playing this guitar. But if you keep up on my videos, you've seen it. And you're probably like, hey, didn't he get rid of that guitar? Well, I did. I returned it, and then I bought it back. I mean, at least I didn't sell it back to them and lose money and then buy it back. It was a straight up return for another guitar, and then they had it in stock at the store. So I went back there and I said, you know what? I know this guitar is good. I'm going to get it. But, and I'm not particularly concerned about this because the nut on this guitar is fine. I actually had some nut files. I cut everything. This guitar, I set it up like perfect. The action is really good on this guitar. I got it basically like 5/64ths on the low E, 4/64ths on the high E, with almost a dead straight neck. Very little relief. So, and it plays nicely down low as well. So I'm cool with that. I'm fine with it. But I gotta tell you, I don't know what it is about epiphone and crooked, like the nut being crooked on an epiphone, but this one's crooked as well. It is straight with the fretboard. It's just the headstock is a little bit crooked. And I have a feeling that if you ever have to take this nut off and replace it, it might be a little tricky. You might have to do a little bit of finagling, but this one was nowhere near as bad as the Slash one was. The Inspired by Gibson was awful. This one's pretty straight by comparison. I've taken a good look at it and checked it. And I didn't even realize that my 335 also has a slightly crooked headstock. So, I mean, I guess this is an Epiphone thing, but I don't know why all these Epiphones are showing up with crooked headstocks, but, yeah. But anyway, so the end of the saga, I'm blabbing on and on. I ended up with the Inspired by Gibson Hummingbird, which I've already shown in a couple of videos, but you know what? The more I play this guitar, the more I actually really like it, and the more I'm just happy that it's a good guitar. It's in good shape, it doesn't have any problems, it's not coming unglued, it's not falling apart, and it sounds nice, and it's a solid wood body. Sitka top, mahogany back and sides. This is not laminate, this is solid wood. The Alvarez that I got ended up having a laminate back and sides, and I could hear the difference. It wasn't hugely dramatic, but I liked the sound of the solid wood guitars better. But I gotta tell you another thing though, because when I went back to Guitar Center, this had been in Guitar Center for less than a month, okay? Because I'd returned it. It had been there for a couple of weeks. I had changed the strings on this thing and set it up. The room that Guitar Center was keeping it in that was supposedly humidified, the strings were so rusted out. Like, you would have thought this had been sitting in that room for 3 years. I was like, oh my God, these strings are awful. They were completely rusted and nasty. We've been having some crazy humidity lately, so that could have something to do with it. But thankfully, nothing else on the body of the guitar was damaged by being in that room. I mean, it was fine. But I was amazed because I knew those strings were new when I put when I returned the guitar, less than a month before. And within a month, the strings had rusted to crap. They were awful. But yeah, I mean, that's neither here nor there. Everything is good here. This thing is set up good and it plays good, and I'm happy that I have a guitar now, and yeah. So that finishes the saga. This is the end of the saga. This will not be going back. This guitar is in good shape. I am keeping it. At some point, maybe I will get my J45 and I'll have the Hummingbird and the J45. But the moral of this story is be careful, because these are good guitars. And they're currently available, although they're getting harder and harder to find. They're not like out of print or gone, but they're just getting tougher to get your hands on. But I've been having I've had some issues, so what are you gonna do, right? But anyway, you can find a good one. It takes time. Unfortunately, I had a lot of problems with the Slash ones. It seems like they're just throwing those things together and not focusing too much on the quality of those guitars. Maybe because they're giving you a lot for the money, they're giving you less. This does not come with a case, so now I got to buy a case, but it's well made. There's nothing, I mean, it's really well made for the most part, except for this nut being a little bit on the weird side. But I mean, the guitar plays fine. There's no weird tension in the strings. Everything's fine. And apparently that's not that big of an issue. Yeah. But there you go. Anyway, this is the end of the acoustic guitar saga. I ended up back with the guitar, one of the guitars I had in the early part before I started going down the Slash Inspired by Gibson route. I now have the Hummingbird, and I like it, and it plays well, and I'm happy with it. And that's the end of it. So anyway, I'm Jay Byrne. This has been the Effects Loop. If you like this kind of content, like, subscribe. You know, I notice a lot of people watch my videos and they aren't subscribed. I could definitely use a subscribe. Now, especially that I'm over 1,000, I'm trying to, you know, make this thing a little bit more legit. And I want to keep putting out content for all y'all, so yes. So yeah, anyway, I hope you like this type of stuff, and I'll see you next time.